Hello, my Crystal Loves Texas family. Thank you for joining us tonight. And we do not like to disappoint, do we, Rebecca?
Absolutely not.
We never, ever like to disappoint. And I promise you, tonight is no exception. So you may recognize a couple of these faces. You recognize them? Well, if you don't recognize them, let me remind you, they are with the Houston Ebony Opera Guild and friends of the Houston Ebony Opera Guild. We have Dr. Jason Obie as well as Patricia Gregory. Give them a hand.
Yay.
That's our studio audience. But we're gearing up for this year's annual African American Music Gala for the 2024 year. And they came by to tell us exactly what we're going to be in store for, what's going to be in store for us this year, and what we can expect, and a little bit about the background of the guild. Let's start with Dr. Obie. Dr. Obie, introduce yourself. I know I didn't do it right, so you do it for me.
You did just fine. My name is Jason Obie, and I am the artistic director of the Houston Ebony Opera Guild.
And Patricia?
I'm Patricia Gregory, and I am a member of the Friends of Houston Ebony Opera Guild. And a lot of groups refer to their groups like us as auxiliaries, but I like to say we are the support group.
Support group. I'm glad you brought that up. So exactly what does a support group do?
A little of everything. We try to be as helpful as we can. Advertising, ticket sales, more advertising, more ticket sales.
I got it. Yeah.
In any way that we can be of assistance to the groups to make their job easier.
Okay.
All right.
And Dr. Obie, people started asking me this whenever I talk about the guild. First of all, people are surprised. People are still surprised in this day and age in Houston that there is an Ebony Opera Guild. Tell me about the genesis of the Houston Ebony Opera Guild.
Well, the group was founded by a man by the name of Robert Henry, who was a faculty member at Prairie View A&M University.
Okay.
And at that time, he had a very highly talented group of singers in his studio and among his students there.
Okay.
And he also believed that there were not sufficient opportunities for them to exhibit their talent on a professional level.
Okay.
So he started this organization as a vehicle for them to have performance opportunities and to have their talents exposed.
Right.
That's how it came about. Over the years, and our recently departed chairman of our board assisted with that founding group of singers to assist with the incorporation of the group and so forth. And they began to do regular concerts. And now we are really one of the primary sources for classical music in Houston.
Oh, wow.
That is absolutely amazing. And the thing is, I know that the last time that you all were here, we were just talking about how few guilds there are for African American guilds across the country. You named a few. What are some of the other ones that are existent?
Well, the ones that come to mind, there's one in New York, which Wayne Sanders and his longtime partner Ben Matthews were a part of. I think that they had one with Phyllis. I can't think of her last name right now in Mississippi, I guess.
Okay.
But just a very small handful, as you indicate, that are really dedicated to opera performance.
Right.
And there's some choral guilds around as well.
Last year, you all really gave us, sort of a baptism by fire, if you will, of what opera and the presence of opera in the African American community has been. And you were telling me a little bit about your background. You knew that you loved opera as a young person. And tell me, you were telling us about your dad taking you to school and that. Tell us a little bit about how you became involved in opera.
Well, as a high school student, I went to a school sort of along the same lines of the HSPVA here in Houston, a magnet school
And this was where?
in Baton Rouge, Louisiana,
In Baton
that was
Rouge.
dedicated to the arts.
Okay.
And at that time, my chosen profession to study was the fine arts, painting. And that's something that I continue as an avocation today. And maybe
Okay.
when I retire, I'll go back to it full time. But I got to high school and got towards the end. And at that time, they would not let you graduate early. I'd finished all my required courses and I had to be in school another semester. And I did not want to go to high math. I didn't want to go past algebra. So I decided to
You
get
needed an elective, huh?
I got into choir, and that is when ex-nun by the name of Cecile Richense took a great interest in me, and I started going and winning Nats competitions and things like that. Then I went to a Jesuit college, Loyola University in New Orleans.
Okay.
I did not graduate from there. I graduated from the Manhattan School of Music, but she got me there, and I got a music scholarship, but I did not get an art scholarship. And over time, music kind of took over, and then I went to conservatory and eventually got a doctoral degree and all those things, and had some, luckily, knock on wood, some substantial performance opportunities. So I've been very fortunate.
And tell us how you came by way of Houston to the Ebony Opera Guild, or vice versa.
Well, I came to Houston in 1996 as a young assistant professor. Just the ink was not dry on my terminal degree.
Mhm.
And I remember very clearly Clyde Jackson, departed Clyde Jackson, who was such an important part of the Guild for a long time and a great music lover and really a trailblazer in Houston in a lot of ways. Sometimes we can talk more about him. Walked into my office one day and told me about the Opera Guild and that he was dispatched to talk to me and to get me involved. And I've been very fortunate that the Opera Guild has been a very consistent fixture in my life since my early years in Houston.
Right.
And, you know, I was very fortunate to have sung leading roles on the Miller stage when we were doing full staged operas with orchestra.
Wow.
And then I became involved in an advisory board. Remember, we used to have that advisory board that would give, you know, advice about things, and there were different people from different professions on that board.
Okay.
Then I became a program director that would assist in planning individual programs.
Right.
And then at some point, I can't remember when, they gave me the title of artistic director. So I've been involved in everything having to do with the Guild probably for the last decade or so.
He was not given that title. He earned it.
Oh,
He earned it.
thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, you know, it's interesting to me. And Rebecca just said something right before we got started. She said something that probably resonates with a lot of other people. Tell us how you found opera, and you said a little something there that that probably a lot of our middle school students, the age groups that we teach, it would be something that they could relate to. And what did you say about how you were introduced?
Well, okay, so I've been culturally connected for a long time. Symphony, jazz, opera was really one of the only genres of music that I actually hated. Like I just could not.
But you said you were introduced before.
Yeah, before, right. So my mom had tickets to the Ebony Opera Guild.
Yes.
And she was like, "Oh, I have something cultural for us to do this weekend." And I was like, "Oh, okay." Because I'm big on culture. So she was like, "We're going to the opera." I said, "No, you're going to the opera. I'm not sitting through that." She was like, "Oh, you thought I was asking." No, we're going. Like, and I was just like, "Mom, I hate opera. Why would you even get tickets without even consulting me?" And she was like, "Again, you thought I was asking."
Uh-huh.
So we went to the matter of fact, it was the performance at Wheeler Avenue Baptist Church.
Uh-huh.
We went to that performance.
And that's is that a yearly performance too that you all do?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's
for
not
Black
always,
history.
It's not always at Wheeler Avenue
Okay.
Baptist Church. It's at different places.
Mhm.
You know, we're
For Juneteenth.
for the Juneteenth. Okay. Was that the concert that you saw? Juneteenth?
Maybe. But it was at Wheeler.
Okay.
And I went and I was sit there with my mouth poked out, like, I can't believe she brought me here.
And then it started.
And then it started. And I was just enthralled.
Wow.
Like, I was like, now had this particular opera happened when I was younger, then I would have had more of an appreciation for it. But it was actually through the Ebony Opera Guild that I have an appreciation for
that
it.
you were introduced.
Yeah.
And Patricia and Dr. Obi, we know that in Houston right now, you know, many people say the arts, it's not anything that has to do with the arts is not necessarily a priority in education right now. However, we know differently, and we know how the arts really speak into the spirit of many of our students to even get them motivated to do other things.
That's true.
As far as education is concerned. How important is it, do you all feel that it is, that we are able to retain budgets for art and performance in public schools?
Well, I mean, that's hard. I mean, of course, public schools as a whole are somewhat under attack, I would say, in this current political climate.
Yes.
For funding, not just for arts, but for all manner of things. And
Right.
the favor, especially in Texas, and y'all don't come from me, Texas politicians, but is to privatize
Yeah.
and to give priority, even the voucher system and all those things that they're trying to do,
Right.
which make public education in general suffer. I just wanted to put a pin in something and go back just a little bit in the conversation so that we can clarify the difference between opera in the sense that people are staged and acting and singing stories with operatic voices,
Right.
and operatic voices singing all manner of music.
Okay.
So with the Opera Guild, which Pat may be able to correct me, which was a title that the founder devised, we don't always sing opera, right? We sing concert music and oratorial music and great anthems and spirituals and all those things. It's not necessarily just opera, although we do have operatic excerpts, concerts, and we have had fully staged programs of opera that we've done, for example, in the Miller Outdoor Theater.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you clarified that, because
Me
when,
too.
when people
Yeah.
hear Ebony Opera Guild, that's what they hear.
They think
like
they're coming to an opera.
opera.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that was clarified.
And I remember you all, for the last couple of years, you've had a residence at my church, the Higher Way Church, where you all come and perform around Christmas time.
That's true.
Yes, and like you said, it's not an opera. It's not a play where the people are singing opera. It's all genres that are performed in operatic voices.
Correct.
Just like
Yeah.
you said.
Yes.
Yes.
Last year, I went to a middle school with Antoine.
Yes.
And he explained what he was going to do, told them about the excerpt that he was going to sing.
Okay.
And there were 3 different lunch times.
Right.
So he did it for 3 different groups of middle school children. Initially, I thought this was a mistake.
Oh my goodness.
Right.
I know what lunchtime is like at a middle school.
Yes.
Yes.
Crazy, insane.
The first group was pretty good. They sat through it.
Probably 6th grade.
Probably 6th grade, of
Yeah.
course.
And there was some of the special education children.
Okay.
also.
Okay.
Gotcha.
But they were more respectful.
Exactly.
The second group was kind of, anyway. And
That was probably 8th
but
grade.
after that group,
Mhm.
there was one girl who came up to talk to him,
Yes.
and she was planning to apply for
HSPVA?
HSPVA.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And with the third group, the table right in front of Antoine
Right.
was all boys.
Wow.
And when he started to sing, they fell on the floor laughing.
Oh my
That was
goodness.
7th grade.
No, that's
That
that
was
age. And
7th
you know the
grade.
thing about it, that's
And
that
it was-
age.
That's
But
7th grade.
At the end of that group, of that session,
Mm-hmm.
there was another girl who came up to talk to him
Mm-hmm.
about going to HSPVA.
Right.
And then I decided it was worth it if we got to to kids.
That's right.
And the thing is, I think children, especially, our kids, they're only introduced to one type of music, and that's
Mhm.
hip hop and rap. And they don't really have an appreciation for anything outside of that because they haven't been exposed to it.
And you remember, Rebecca, last year when Antoine was here, he said he was the same way. He wanted to be a rapper.
Right.
He said, I wanted to be a rapper.
Yeah.
And someone else, a teacher, noticed my gift.
Mhm.
He said, but I didn't want to hear anything about opera. I wanted to be a rapper.
Yeah.
And Julie, when Julie came and sat with us last year, Julie Jackson, she said, in middle school, I would not even tell anyone I was interested in opera because it's that stigma in that
Right.
age. And these are two of, some of the most accomplished members of the guild.
But the
now.
stigma is because of lack of exposure.
That's absolutely
So
right.
that's why they have the stigma.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that that's true. And I think at the age group that we're talking about, they want to be cool. They want to be all
Right.
right.
It
of
is. They wanna
course.
fit
And I don't
in,
know that
yes.
it's necessarily just because they are African American kids, but because that popular
all ages,
culture
yeah.
is so pervasive,
It sure is.
and kids don't want to be doing anything that's different from what think the other
Right.
kids are going
The
to.
That's
do.
kids
right.
that we visited with last year were not African American kids.
Right.
No,
Exactly.
Urban kids. Let's just say
They-
urban kids.
Yeah.
That's right.
I have to tell you this story when I was just getting involved in classical singing.
Mhm.
And typically young singers start out singing little Italian songs,
Mhm.
and they're in a book that everybody knows,
Right.
the 24 Italian Songs book. So the same teacher in high school who'd given me these songs, and I'd be in the bathroom singing my little Cal Romeo Ben or whatever it was. And my dad, who's now 91, about to be 92,
Wow.
thought he was being funny, came and knocked on the door. Son, you okay? I'll call a doctor for you if I need to. You okay?
And you were in there singing.
I was in there singing. So you must be in pain. Let me call somebody.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. But like I said, it's interesting. But by the time they get to 8th grade and they're starting to think more about where they may want to pursue their high school career, and they do have talent, and especially if there has been a teacher who has been even if it's not a course teacher, a theater or any teacher who has been able to push them into their gift, you find them less concerned about what others think.
That's true.
And you see, I could tell the grade levels by the description.
Absolutely.
Like it
By what
was
they
just
were
like,
doing.
oh, okay, I know what. Yeah, when she
Absolutely.
was like, they were kind of calm, and I was like, oh, that's 8th grade. But when she said they fell on the floor laughing, I just
Yeah,
knew.
it's that age. Now, Dr. Obi and Patricia, every year you all have a different theme for the gala. And this year, tell us about the theme.
Well, I'm going to defer to when our guest conductor comes on so he can tell you about all
Ooh.
the programming, which were really his choices.
Yes.
And it's a very exciting program.
Okay.
And I don't want to spoil it, but
Okay.
there are some really great things that are rarely heard, particularly a piece by Julia Perry, who's an African-American woman composer, and other things too that I think are just real treats that are not often heard.
Yes.
So I'll save that for you all to let Maestro McDaniel give you those tidbits and to give you some background about those pieces, if you don't mind.
Oh, absolutely not. But I do want to say this. Last year, when you all came up and joined me on the podcast, I know that there were, I'm going to say, Julie and Antoine, and you were there, Dr. Obi, and there was one other person, Patricia. I don't think you were there for that. You were there for a different podcast. We did something different. But one thing that you told us, and this stuck with me because I didn't even realize this. You all perform numbers and arrangements that have been composed by people, African American people, who are still living.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, we
And
do.
when you think about opera, you're thinking about back in
back in the day.
Yes,
Right,
yes.
And
exactly.
oftentimes you think that they must be in a foreign language.
That's right.
Neither of those are necessarily the case.
Yes.
So, when we think about typical grand opera, you're thinking about Verdi or Puccini or
exactly.
Right,
people like that.
exactly,
And I think that's a part of what,
And on the African American side, Paul Robeson
well, Paul Robeson was a great singer,
Performer,
of
yeah.
course. But, I think that the former that I discussed, these are things that do separate people because it's a
Exactly.
different time period. It's a different country.
Yes.
It's a different language.
They
It's a
cannot
different
relate.
everything
Yes.
that they don't see the connection. They don't see themselves
Absolutely.
in that. But, just before we started, I was talking with your producer, and he was saying that he went to an opera the first
For the
time,
first
to
time.
see Falstaff and how much he enjoyed it.
Yes.
There was another opera performed at HGO in this season called Intelligence. That was a true, based on a true story about an African American woman in the South.
Wow.
So, and I could name, many. If I sat here and thought about it, there's some operas even composed by Black composers,
Right.
such as Streamanisha of Scott Joplin is one example. And if I sat here and scratched my head for a few minutes, I could think of several more. But no more is it just the stronghold of 19th century Europe.
Exactly.
It's a lot more to it.
Exactly.
So let me ask you a question.
Mhm.
Do are there starting to be, since we're talking about exposure and we're talking about the different genres, what about have y'all seen where maybe millennials or Gen Z, have they started or have they started to compose opera pieces?
Oh, absolutely. There are a lot of younger people who are composing now, and their pieces are being debuted all over the country.
That's awesome.
So I'm thinking particularly one that comes to mind right away is Damian Gator, who's a very interesting young composer, and I'm sure Greg probably knows more because I'm not as connected to it as I used to be. But there are a number of them who are working and having their pieces exposed now. There was a composer in residence here at HGO. Joel Thompson is his name, and one of his pieces was performed, I guess, last season. So, I'm talking on the cuff, but if I sat and had to do a paper about it, I'd sit and take some notes, and I'd come up with some more names. So there are quite several that are having national reputations now.
And the reason I ask, because when you think, like you said, when you think about opera and you think about it in those tones, a lot of terms you think about like older.
Yes.
Like you think about the Marian Andersons, you don't really get past. So I was wondering, are there, and you answered it, of course, are there a new generation of composers and singers?
I think so, especially as these younger composers take on the stories that they relate to and they just express them in an operatic context.
Yes.
So, and I can understand, you mentioned the names of some great performers from the mid-century, I would say.
Yes.
And for example, HEOG, along with HGO and Wheeler Avenue Church, in February of 2023, participated in a big mass choir for Giving Voice, was the name of the concert, and that they were all Black composers, performers on the concert, and they honored George Shirley, and George Shirley was the first. Let me speak very carefully. The first African American man to sing a leading role as a romantic lead at the Metropolitan Opera. Before him was Marian Anderson, and just after Marian Anderson was Robert McFerrin. Robert McFerrin is the father of Bobby McFerrin.
I was going to say, wait a second. That
I was like, yeah, that name sounds very familiar.
Yeah, people can relate to Bobby.
Right,
Okay.
exactly.
Yeah.
So, there are all kinds of connections that can be made there. And many of them go back to, African American community. But I can even say, even before that, we can go to the turn of the last century, not the last one, the one before last, 19th, going into 20th, and talk about people like Cicely Jones and, others that were really pioneers in terms of Black people singing in classical music and singing operatically. Now, there were not so many opportunities for Black singers in the United States.
They had to go overseas
They
to
went
Europe
overseas,
and
Wow.
those
all
areas.
of that.
I do remember reading that.
Wow.
That's
Yeah.
true. Yeah.
You know, Dr. Obi, before we got started, you and I were talking, and I was kind of telling you about some of the questions that I'm asked when people found out that we interviewed the members of the guild and the friends of the guild last year. They started asking a lot of questions at school,
Mhm.
and one of the things that they asked was, "How do you all?" How do you develop your talent? When we get to see the guild, we see the
finished product.
the finished
Mhm.
product. But do you all go in and do you have a developmental leg of the guild where you develop them from 12, 13, 14 years old? How do you all get your members?
Well, a couple of answers to that question, and Pat may be able to go deeper into it. But we have talked a lot over the years that I've been involved about something like that, having high school outreach and things like that. And occasionally those opportunities have come to us, just as she was describing, going to the school with Antoine and having them sing and things like that.
Right.
Those kinds of things we've done. We regularly have participated in, I don't know what the young Black professionals group is, that we send a group of singers in to orient them. But these are young adults who
Right.
Mhm.
want to have some education and culture and things of that nature.
Okay.
But we do not have a regular kind of development arm for talent.
Okay.
Now, we used to have
For a number of
a
years.
summer program
Mhm.
where it was a young artist program. But these are young artists, usually people who'd already finished a master's degree. And Willie Waters was over that. Willie is still alive, but has had some health problems and is not
Okay.
available to us anymore. But that is something that we should think about. Now, let me just stick into here
Mhm.
that the Ebony Opera Guild is a largely volunteer organization.
Okay.
And staff members such as myself, are paid, and course members are paid, but it is not a salaried kind of a thing.
Right.
So people who are working, are working at an ad hoc kind of basis.
Right.
So we have wonderful volunteers like Pat here and like Mary, who we sadly lost recently, and others who keep the organization going.
Yes.
But in terms of having a development arm, the organization does not have the administrative capacity to sustain that.
At this
Okay.
point.
At this point,
At this point.
there you go.
Yes.
For instance, Crystal,
Yes.
when I said that we supported,
Mhm.
when those students were here,
Right.
they were studying at Houston Grand Opera also,
Mhm.
Wow.
and there would be 3 or 4 of us, and we would be chauffeurs.
Yeah.
We would make
gotcha.
sure that they made it to every one of those
Right.
performances.
Performances. Right.
If they were studying with somebody that day, whatever they needed to do, we made sure. that
Airport
they
trips,
got
you
there.
guys did all of that. Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
But the other thing I wanted to mention, you said something about the concerts, the major concerts being different each year.
Yes.
And I think that is a very large reason why many people continue to come.
Absolutely.
They
They're
know
themed.
that they
They're
will
themed.
not see
Yes.
the same thing
That's
every
right.
year.
That's
Right.
right.
That we
Mhm.
work hard. The Houston Ebony Opera Guild works
Yes.
hard at making these programs unique
Absolutely.
and interesting,
Yes.
so that people will always want to come. What are they going to do this year?
Exactly. Now, tell me what we're looking at here, Dr. Obi. I know that it looks like some of your members, your members get out into the community and they make appearances at different other talk shows and radio shows promoting
Yeah.
the guilds. And it looks like it's a certain maybe within the guild. Are there different branches? Are there certain groups that kind of learn about each other and befriend each other, and they go and they perform
Well,
and promote the guild in that manner?
Well, this particular photograph is from a radio program,
Mhm.
KUHF, that we used to have, but no longer exists,
Mhm.
called The Front Row.
Okay.
And The Front Row would highlight, just as you're doing here, but different events and culture that were happening in Houston. And this particular thing is a quartet in the old gospel quartet style of male quartets,
Okay.
and this is what they were doing. This was a very, very wonderful, exciting program. And in fact, it was so often, it was so well received when it was done that there were many um, opportunities for us to repeat that particular portion of that concert. So, many people are very nostalgic about the African American male quartets as those in the 1940s and things like that.
Yes.
And John Cornelius, who is a composer and who is on the faculty at Prairie View A&M University, arranged those quartets, which were
Okay.
sung as a part of that particular concert.
And you can look at it and tell it spans the generations. I see people looks like in their 20s in here, and then someone's hair is a little bit gray in here. So, yeah.
So,
So you got a generational thing going there.
Yeah,
with members. I
I
noticed that
think
too in
I
person.
think in one or two of those cases, only Miss Clairol knows for sure, but we'll leave that. I'm kidding. I'm
You
kidding.
heard it here.
I'm
You
just
heard it
kidding.
here. And how about this? I had to pull this one. Tell us about that.
That is
I
Mr.
love
Dorciel
it.
Duckins,
Yes.
Oh my God.
and
his
I believe
garb.
he is
Yes.
singing Othello in that
Yes.
picture. Yes.
And he was actually in the actual play.
Well, this would
Oh,
be
was
an
that-
opera.
Yes.
It was
yes,
done
at
in the Miller
opera.
Outdoor Theater.
This is
probably was
Wow.
what 1996 or
Something
something
like
like that, because that
This
was when
is
I
nice.
first came to
Yeah.
Houston.
This is Othello.
Yeah, when they performed the actual opera in Miller Outdoor
Miller
Theater.
Outdoor
Oh
Theater.
wow.
Wow. Well, you know what? Well, have we got a treat for you? We have got a couple of additional guests that are coming on to tell us about some different aspects of the guild. But before we do that, I've got a little treat for you here. And you all can, we've got Julie Jackson, Casey Timmons, and you all can tell us at the end of this who our third person is in this particular number. But they were absolutely wonderful, and they came and performed at the Highway Church at our Christmas concert.
Alleluia, alleluia.
Okay, and we are back. We are absolutely back. And through the power of magic, was it magic, Rebecca?
It was. Soup.
Oh, there we are. And that's not
Abracadabra.
Patricia. That's not. No. That's not Dr. Obi. We've got two more guild representatives here. And can you introduce yourselves, because they have different functions that they're gonna have with the gala this year. And it always looks like it's to the left on that screen, but to my far right, introduce yourself, please.
My name is Bill Howard, William Howard, but everybody calls me Bill.
Bill. Okay, can we call you Bill?
You can call me Bill.
We can call you Bill.
Hi, Bill.
And Bill, tell us a little bit about what you do with the opera along with performing.
Well, I am the chorus manager.
Okay.
Now, that's different from being like a chorus master.
Okay.
The chorus master will be someone who would prepare the chorus for the maestro, for the director. The chorus manager is more administrative. I have communication with the chorus members. I make sure everybody's aware of the schedule and the information that they'll need.
Okay. Well, I got to ask you this. I was going to ask Dr. Obi, but I think that it's more appropriate for me to ask you this. Okay. Have you ever had to referee two members, both of them who wanted to perform a solo?
Referee, no. We're very diplomatic about.
Well, that's good. That's good, because when you talk about performers, many times performers they're artists, and they like their performances, and they feel that their performances merit being showcased. So if you did have a situation like that, how do you resolve something like that? Because you all have got
the most talented one.
Well,
you all have got so much talent.
Exactly. Plus, we all like our own voices.
Exactly. Yes, that's my point. But the thing about it is, it seems like there's such a harmony within the group, and with so much talent there. How is it decided who's going to do what?
By audition.
Okay.
And then the director will make the final selection.
Okay. And if you have someone who is just great and they're always great, do they always get to do the solo?
Not always, because we do have a lot of talent, as you mentioned. We have different people who can do and capable of performing as needed.
And you know what? With that in mind, switching over to Conductor McDaniel, because you all have different genres in the different galas that you have, it may be more fitting for one person to do something than others. So tell us about how you guys go about selecting the genre of what's going to be performed for the galas every year.
Well, we always start from what is the intended, genre, like what is the intended mood, and of course it's all celebratory.
Yes.
And we always want to obviously embrace our culture of spirituals,
right,
and also operatic repertoire.
Love that.
So this particular concert really does combine the spiritual aspect, but also the classical and the high art, if you will,
okay,
of the voice and of music in general, and classical music. So with that in mind, like, we do have music that is very much European sounding, particularly our Julia Perry piece. But then you have something that is Ride the Chariot, which is a very more of a down south spiritual gospel-esque type of number.
Okay.
And I first worked with the group this past December.
That was going to be my next question. How long have you been with the? Yeah.
So since December, I started working with the group around, I guess, probably October, November. I prepared the chorus, chose the music,
right,
and prepared the chorus, and then we had our performance in December.
Okay.
And it was a fantastic time, and everyone really had a phenomenal time. Audience, the singers alike. We did feature music from Amala Night Visitors, which is an opera by Menotti, a Christmas opera. And we also, we had our spiritual at the very end, or this really rousing number.
Right.
We had a cappella numbers. It's a variety, something for everyone to enjoy, and that was the intention for this gala.
Yeah.
So how long did it take you guys to put it to
put
he was like, oh, I'm
together.
glad somebody asked me
Wow.
that one.
For our December concert or for this upcoming concert?
Both.
So, with the music chosen,
Right.
it can take, it takes we have about 6 or 7 rehearsals planned, and every minute is
That's
important.
fast. That's
yeah.
fast.
Oh,
I thought you
yes.
were going to say for each one of our performances, it takes 6 months for us to put that together. Wow.
No, we have phenomenal singers and
Yeah,
musicians.
they're professionals.
Professionals,
So.
musicians, and I want to really distinguish that word from singer from music. Like there really are, very capable musicians. You were going to say something, Bill, or
No, I was going to say 6 to 8 weeks
Yeah.
normally.
Okay. That's I breathed a little bit of a sigh of relief because that sounds much more feasible. Now, let me ask you this. I've often wondered this about groups such as the Guild. When you have people that leave the group for a certain reason, they may move out of town, they may have been transferred, and you have to fill certain seats. How do you all go about doing that? Do you have understudies?
Well, not necessarily understudies, but we're constantly recruiting
Okay.
because people, as you mentioned, they may go out of town,
Right.
they may have health issues.
Yes.
So yes, we're always recruiting.
and some of our singers have other things that they do, other
Exactly.
professional gigs and opportunities that they may need to
Right.
go for, and we understand that. But yes, it's always every group, every
Yes.
musical group, it's always recruiting. It's how we stay alive and current, and and
So what are your
Uh-huh.
recruiting mechanisms? Like, how do you go about bringing talent?
How do people find out about?
Well, the recruiting aspect, I am a professional recruiter myself,
Uh-huh.
Okay.
information technology. So I have the skill, and I just pretty much use the same talent. That is by referrals.
Okay.
Who do you know?
Right.
And then just, get on the phone and talk to some people and say, well, we're looking for this or that. And, do you know anyone who can do this particular voice we're looking for?
Okay.
Yes.
word of mouth. And then also, we invite people to our concerts, obviously. So there's always
Yes.
usually talent within that audience. Say, oh, I would love to be a part of that. And that was for me, as a young kid, watching the Guild as a kid, going to the operas and going to the concerts, and say, that'd be really cool one day to be involved. And
Yeah, you and I had a total opposite.
How did you know I was going to ask you about that next? Now, tell me, how did you become involved in opera?
There was always music around
Because
the
you
house.
are a young guy.
Yeah, no, thank you. No, sometimes my knees don't feel that way.
I know that's right. Come on, niece. I understand.
Yes.
No, there was always music around the house, but not a lot of classical music. But I remember seeing things on TV and like, oh, wow, that's really cool. And when I was in middle school choir, I took drill music and middle school choir. I went on my own I guess journey of discovering what this art form. So I remember going to the library downtown,
Right,
and checking
right.
out the music and operas, and I checked out the music scores so I can read along and like what they're singing. And I was a boy soprano, so I imitated all those sopranos,
Yes.
Leontine Price, and try to sing as high as they could, in my grandmother's home. And so that's how it started. So I, so just love. And mind you, I had never seen an opera at that.
Wow.
Until I was until my freshman year of high school.
Crystal, you notice
Yes.
a running theme from this year and last year. Every time we interview a singer from the Opera Guild, it's always, well, we had music in our home. We had music
Yes.
every single
And that's
singer
so
has the
important.
same
But
background.
And the thing about it is probably in African American homes, that's not unheard of,
Right, it's
probably,
not
but it's not
unusual.
necessarily opera,
Right.
like we both said. But you can speak to this a little bit. Tell me this, because this is what we were just discussing when the other two members were up here. When you were in middle school, was it you didn't announce to your peers at school that I just love opera and
Oh, I did. That
Oh,
was
you
the
did?
opposite.
That's
No,
good.
I was.
That's good.
Unshameful about it.
That's That's
And
awesome.
I was the kid that had a music score in my hand.
Yes.
And like, oh my God, I
So
sang
you knew
this.
early on
I
that
knew
this
very-
was in, yes.
very
Oh,
much
very
so.
passionate about
Very,
it.
very passionate about it. And then I was very blessed to have a phenomenal middle school choir teacher and told me about HSPVA. I applied, auditioned on my own, and got in. And then from those wonderful teachers there, just really immersed me into the art form by actually taking me to performances.
Wow.
And there was, I went to see Rigoletto and Tannhäuser and Jennifer,
Wow.
and all these great operas there, and also University of Houston, which is what was my alma mater. So
Yes.
that connection is always
So
important.
those teachers pushed you in that direction.
Of course.
And let me say this. Let me say this.
I knew it was coming.
Yeah, you know I was going to say that. Now, we have heard, well, I won't touch on that right now. I will touch on it, but not right this second. But of late, we have heard people say in different conversations that really there's a huge lack of competent teachers in our public school system. So,
Right.
yeah, we're not competent. Okay. I'm a teacher, 17 years. She's a teacher, 10 years, middle school teacher.
Mm-hmm.
But there are very few or little to no competent teachers. And, when we hear things like that, that's very offensive to us. But one of my church members who just retired this year was a music teacher and in this district. And one of the reasons that she was told that her position was being phased out was because they only needed those performing arts teachers on the upper school levels or the high school levels. But she said, but wait a minute.
Purposes.
No, but she said, well, wait a minute. Who do you think is feeding those kids into those upper school programs?
Right.
It's not that doesn't happen in a vacuum.
Right.
So,
and you guys can speak to this, especially you being an educator yourself.
Yes.
And being educated in music.
Yes.
We've also been told that the performing arts are not essential to a child's education. And that it's not needed. It's the only thing that's needed is academics, and performing arts are just, it's not essential. It's not important. Didn't even understand why it's still in schools.
But that's interesting, and I'm going to let him answer that question. But that's interesting because at the very beginning of
everybody looks disgusted.
Yeah,
when
at
I
the very beginning of our year this year, we had a grand performance of a musical over at NRG that was rehearsed for many weeks and presented. So that is, somehow I'm not relating that together as being something that's a cohesive statement, because performing arts, it's what's gotten some people through university and post baccalaureate studies, and that's been a huge part of our culture as Americans, performing arts, music.
I'm actually going to Team EA, Texas Music Education Association, tomorrow and Friday. And one of the first sessions they talk about is how many students that are involved in band, orchestra, choir, achieve very high scores on the SAT, ACT.
They absolutely do.
It teaches teamwork,
discipline,
something that you have to practice for.
Right.
Learning the art of, I hate to use this word, failure. We have to learn how to fail and get back up and try again. And we do it over and over.
And polite competition.
Polite competition.
Because you're not going to get every audition
that's right.
that you came out for.
That's right.
It teaches resilience.
Moving some, Bill. Okay. Moving some. I want to make sure that you stay in the
frame
there. Yeah, almost out of the frame. But Bill, with you being a recruiter, and you talking to adults, and you recruiting for something that's absolutely completely removed from music, but it's also a discipline, also an area that takes a lot of discipline. How do you see the likeness between people being successful in a technical field like that, and the discipline that it takes to perfect a craft like you recruit for, and what has to happen for a performer to be proficient?
Well, what I was going to say is in regard to like some information technology, I know that a lot of companies don't necessarily look for computer science or
Really?
math majors, but music
Really?
has a lot of logic. in
That's my
music.
point. Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
So that is it's a very helpful skill, you know.
Right.
And it
Music.
makes sense because in order for you to have a perfect piece, everything has to fit together.
Correct.
So, what can we expect from this year's gala?
So
Conductor McDaniel, what can we expect?
I spent quite a bit of time putting programs together and figuring out what worked for this gala. And one of the pieces I was very passionate about is called "A Stabat Mater" by
Okay.
Julia Perry. And I just realized merely days ago that this is a Julia Perry year in music because she was born in 1924.
Wow.
So her 100th
Yes.
year.
Oh,
Yes.
wow.
The piece was written very early in her life when she was 27,
Wow.
and it was I guess you could almost call it almost a school project, but I wouldn't dare deem it so because it's a phenomenal masterpiece, early masterpiece of hers. Her work. I only heard about in only maybe around the pandemic where we had a lot of
Wow.
social justice
Right.
issues, and so a lot of music organizations were promoting a lot of music of African American people of color.
Exactly.
And this piece came up, and I was like, oh my God, I would love to do this piece one day. And so it came time for the gala, and of course, Stabat Mater means the mother of Christ,
Right.
standing or sitting or watching Jesus being crucified
Right.
from her perspective. So it's a very, very deep subject, and a very serious subject. And so I thought this would be a wonderful centerpiece among the other pieces that we have programmed, traditional spirituals by living and non-living composers,
Yes.
and some solos by art songs by composers, African American composers.
Okay, so we know that it's coming up. The gala this year is coming up on Sunday, February the 25th, 2024 at 4 p.m. at Westbury United Methodist Church. And the tickets are $35. And is there a discounted rate for students or groups? Can groups come, and or do they need to call? Do they need to call the office and get more information for group pricing, or is everything pretty standard?
I think the group pricing is $30. Yes.
Okay, so groups of 10 or more, $30 per person.
Right.
So that's a nice outing, Rebecca. So if you want to grab your church members, grab your girlfriends, go out to brunch,
Mhm.
and then have an operatic experience that afternoon. That's a perfect place to do that and possibly experience something you haven't experienced before. We're coming almost to the close of our show, but this particular gala is it's a special dedication for this one. And tell us, Bill, a little bit about what that dedication is.
Well, this program is going to be dedicated to our former, our now dearly departed chair, Miss Mary Guillory.
Correct.
To her memory, yes, because Mary was very instrumental in the functioning and the life of the Guild after the departure of Dr. Robert Henry.
She picked up that torch.
She did. She
carried it forward all these years. And this is, I don't want to say a trivia, but this is something that actually came to mind for me. Can one of you tell me the age of the youngest person in the Guild and the oldest performer in the Guild? Because when I say it does span those generations, it spans generations.
I don't know the age of the youngs, but I would say somewhere
like
in the
20.
20s.
Yeah, I've seen 20s.
Wow.
Yeah, I've seen 20-year-olds.
Wow.
Yeah, some of my church members, I've seen 20-year-olds there.
The oldest, that would be me. No, I'm not. We have a member I know is maybe a couple of years older than he's 71.
Wow. That is awesome. So this is a genre and a group that you have no limitations as far as age and will and desire to perform and to give that gift back to the community, because certainly the Guild has been a gift to the Houston community for all these years.
Yes.
And also, as far as the youth, we have had some college students to perform with us too.
Really?
Yes.
Correct.
Now I remember
Prairie View and TSU.
Yes, because I remember last year we had Melissa to come in, Dytman, and she I think that maybe she conducted the Christmas the spring
Juneteenth.
the spring, was it Juneteenth?
I think it was the Juneteenth.
No, she actually performed. Right.
Yeah, she sure did. Okay, yes, I remember that, and she was wonderful, and she works with the young groups down there.
Right.
So and you love to see I love to see a genre being lifted up and preserved.
Continuation of the
Yes.
art.
Absolutely.
Exactly, yes.
And with you all, and I'm looking right here, we've got generations with the Guild sitting right here with us, and you represent what we want it to always continue to be. If you could give us a last word, Bill, about what we should expect on the 25th, give us a last word, and then I'm gonna let you give us the last word.
Well, I believe you're going to hear some tremendous singing. You're going to hear some music you may have heard before, but hopefully performed in a manner that at a higher level than you've ever heard.
Yes.
And I think you're going to enjoy it.
Okay.
2 words.
Conductor McDaniel.
2 words.
Tell us those
Black-
2 words.
Black excellence.
Black excellence. Yes. I absolutely love it. And Rebecca, what do you want to tell us? Are we going to be there?
Yes, we're going to be there. And
We're absolutely going to be there.
And speaking of the arts, I just want to send just a little shout out to my goddaughter, Savannah Roundtree. She is actually doing the murals for Meyerland Middle School. She's drawing and painting the murals for Meyerland. And she entered a contest with 30 other kids, and she beat all 30 kids, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade.
That's
So-
awesome. So the arts are important.
The arts are important.
It's important
Very
to fund
important.
the arts. It's important to make sure that we are upholding arts teachers.
Yes.
Yes. And I know that you are in a district that really supports the arts, and that's very important, because what is America without performing arts? So Rebecca Williams, Bill Howard, conductor Gregory McDaniel, thank you guys so much for coming in. And of course, our other guests, Dr. Jason Obi and Patricia Gregory, for coming in. I cannot wait until February the 25th at 4 o'clock.
4 p.m.
At 4 p.m. at Westbury United Methodist Church, the 2024 Annual African American Music Gala, presented by the Houston Ebony Opera Guild. We will see you then. And as we say every week, Rebecca,
we can do it.
See you later.
Guys.